Former ambassador to Russia. Thomas Pickering, Ambassador, what do you make of what you just heard from the American president on foreign soil, standing next to the leader of Russia?
Well, I think it was breathtakingly obvious that each side was clearly going to use this press conference in one way or another to spin it up so that, in fact, the really difficult questions were ignored on the one hand or shoved aside by oblique answers. And at the same time, each one of them tempted to pump up the notion that this was somehow a resounding success without enough detail for us to have a real sense that one way or another this made any difference in the U.S.-Russian relationship. Everything was left to be basically dealt with by the National Security Council on the one hand, or in the kind of crazy details that in one way or another we will have to examine over a period of time. There was a little bit of the relationship here of what actually happened with Kim Jong-un, where the president, in fact, spun up a report that was vague, not specific, generally upbeat, but without much content.
Ambassador, you hold the highest title of distinction in the Foreign Service, and that is Career Ambassador after your 4 decades as a diplomat. When you hear the American president say, I don't see any reason why it would be Russia interfering in our election, running so counter to the standing findings and advice of our intelligence community, what does that say to you?
It says to me that it's a breathtaking denial of something that clearly is so obviously true that it represents the epitome of President Trump's effort at self-promotion over the notion of defending the national interest of the United States, something that I've been saying for some time.
Ambassador, thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Terrific to have your viewpoint coming right out of this. Kelly O'Donnell is, as we mentioned, in the 6th row of that gathering. Kelly, was it as striking to you there, given all the translation back and forth in the moment, as our mutual friend Jonathan Lemire stood and delivered his fusillade of questions?
Well, you're reading my mind, Brian, because it was almost visceral in this room as the translation came through on a couple of these issues, including our colleagues Jeff Mason and Jonathan Lemire, who asked pointed, difficult questions that many journalists have wanted to have answered, and so credit to them. But when we heard Vladimir Putin actually retroactively endorse President Trump for the office he now holds, that was a striking moment. It was also striking how the president of the Russian Federation sort of smiled and reacted as the translation went through to him about the dossier question or having any compromising information about the president or his family. There are questions that seemed in many ways still easy to answer, and President Trump did not take that moment. We have seen other presidents who have been with adversaries who could declare publicly, do not encroach on the United States. And to be able to say that, even in the face of the denial of his counterpart, with whom he has many other issues he's got to deal with, and he's trying to project that they have economic and security issues where they're trying to work together. I thought master spycraft, that when the questioning got hot, the soccer ball came out, presenting that to President Trump, who then extended it to the First Lady. Of course, their son Barron is an avid soccer fan. It was surreal in so many ways. We all knew the kinds of questions American journalists wanted to have answered. We anticipated some of the answers, but the president had an opportunity here to make clear that not simply looking backward, but looking to the election that's coming up in a few months, the election that's coming up in 2020, to send a very clear signal that any kind of interference is unacceptable. Also, the notion that Vladimir Putin knows everything about what his operatives are doing. And even if he was not personally involved in the detail, although the intelligence says otherwise, he's ultimately responsible as the president. And President Trump simply did not take those opportunities to send a strong message suggesting the jury is still out, which is not the evidence of U.S. intelligence and law enforcement communities, and to opine that there was not a motivation for Russia to do so is striking. I'm not sure I've heard him say that before. And yes, there are other topics where they